My name is Lillian. I'm 30 years old and a colonel in the United States Army. Tomorrow, I'll be sitting at a table across from my father and my brother in a high-stakes defense contract meeting. The catch? They have no idea that I'm the Pentagon liaison with final approval authority. 5 years ago, I left that house without looking back. I was tired of being the disappointment, the daughter who threw her future away by choosing military service over business school. My father once told me the Army was for people who had no real options. That was the last meaningful conversation we had. Tonight, I'm back for family dinner. My mother will talk about Arthur's promotion, my father will beam with pride, and someone will ask me if I'm still traveling a lot. I won't argue. I won't correct them. Because tomorrow, when their boss calls me Colonel Chambers in front of a room full of executives, the silence will speak for itself. Let them have this night. Tomorrow, everything changes. The driveway was narrower than I remembered. My old car used to fit with room to spare, but now my rented black SUV looked too imposing, too out of place, next to my mother's aging minivan. I cut the engine and sat in silence, letting the hum of the heater fade. My palms were dry now, what they'd call military calm, but my stomach still churned like before a mission. The porch light was on, casting a warm yellow glow on the worn welcome mat and faded front door. Nothing had changed, not the cracked steps, not the brown hedges desperately needing a trim, and certainly not the feeling that awaited me inside. That particular mix of being invisible and hyperanalyzed all at once. I rang the doorbell out of habit. Lillian, my mother called from the kitchen. She didn't come to the door. It's open. Of course it was. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The same floral scent, the same wall of framed photos. My brother's graduation, his wedding, his 2 children. No photos of me in uniform. Not even the commissioning portrait I'd sent 5 years ago. Dinner's almost ready, my mother said without looking up as I walked into the kitchen. Arthur and Caroline are on their way. Arthur just got another promotion. You'll never believe it. I smiled politely. That's great, Mom. You'll have to congratulate him. He's leading the entire systems integration team now. Everyone at your father's company says he's going places. That phrase, going places, used to haunt me. It always sounded like a train I'd missed. Now it was just noise. The dining room table was set for 6. There was no place card, but the seating was implied. Arthur at the head, Dad to his right, Mom between them, and me somewhere that didn't matter. Arthur and Caroline arrived precisely on time as always. He wore the kind of blazer that says, I'm important but not trying too hard, and she brought a bottle of wine none of us would truly appreciate but all would pretend to. Hey, Lily, Arthur said, giving me a quick hug, already looking over my shoulder toward Dad. Long time. 5 years, I replied. He blinked, clearly unsure if I was joking. I wasn't. We ate roast beef, mashed potatoes, and the same salad my mother had made since I was 10. Arthur effortlessly dominated the conversation, detailing corporate restructures, performance bonuses, and what his team was doing for the military arm of the company. My father looked like he might weep with pride. And you, Lillian? My mother turned to me, her smile polite but empty. Still traveling with the Army. I took a sip of water. More or less. Still a captain? Dad asked, his eyes not leaving his fork. Something like that. Must be tough, always being in the field, Arthur added. I mean, no long-term strategy, right? Just following orders. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My uniform was still neatly folded in the back of my duffel bag upstairs, the silver eagle insignia reflecting light through the fabric. Tomorrow, they'd find out just how much strategy one was in charge of. For now, I let them talk. It would be the last time they'd talk over me. I spent most of the evening in my old bedroom, perched on the edge of a twin bed covered by the same patchwork quilt my grandmother had sewn when I was 12. The walls were still lined with relics of a version of myself they had believed in: basketball trophies, honor roll certificates, college acceptance letters. Every achievement prior to the moment I joined the Reserve Officer Training Corps. After that, I became a cautionary tale in this house. There were no framed articles about my cybersecurity awards, no photos from my missions, no certificates marking my promotions to major and then lieutenant colonel. The most significant achievement of my life, full colonel in the U.S. Army Cyber Command at 30, was completely invisible in this home. I remembered the day I told them about the ROTC scholarship. I'd expected hesitation, but not the disgust. My father had looked at me as if I'd thrown myself away. "The military is for people who have no real potential," he'd said. "You were always meant for more." He meant his version of more. Of course, an MBA, a corner office, and ideally a position under his wing at Bridgepoint Solutions, the same defense company he'd devoted his life to. It was always meant to be Arthur. And when Arthur fit that mold effortlessly, the family narrative was complete. I wasn't the daughter who chose a different path. I was the daughter who squandered hers. Downstairs, I heard the echo of laughter, Dad's deep chuckle, Mom's soft one, Arthur's booming confidence. The sound of a tribe gathered around a chosen successor. I'd grown used to it, but the irony was almost poetic now. Arthur had just been promoted to lead the systems integration team on the military contract I now oversaw. He didn't know. None of them knew. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., I'd walk into Bridgepoint Solutions in full uniform, brief the executive board as the Pentagon liaison for Project Guardian, and evaluate the very technical strategy Arthur had boasted about at dinner. Back in my room, I opened my duffel bag and pulled out my perfectly pressed uniform. My ribbons and medals were precisely aligned. The colonel's eagle insignia gleamed under the soft light. I checked for loose threads and polished the buttons with a cloth I always carried. My hands moved mechanically, ritual over emotion, because tomorrow wasn't about revenge. It was about precision, presence, and performance. It was about finally letting them see who I had become, in a language they couldn't interrupt or belittle. The next morning, I arrived at Bridgepoint Solutions 15 minutes early. The parking lot was already packed with employees in business attire, hurrying through security checks with badges and briefcases. I parked in the reserve spot marked, stepped out in full uniform, and straightened my collar. Heads turned as I walked past the front checkpoint. Some stared, others straightened, but no one questioned why I was there. "Good morning, Colonel," the guard at the entrance said, scanning my badge. His tone was crisp, respectful, the kind of greeting I never heard in my father's house. Inside, I bypassed the reception and took the elevator to the executive floor. I'd memorized the floor plan weeks ago. No surprises, no hesitation. When the doors opened, the first person I saw was Arthur. He was standing near the hallway window, flipping through a sleek presentation tablet. His posture was relaxed until he saw me step out. He blinked. "Lillian? Why are you... What is this?" I didn't stop. "Good morning, Mr. Chambers. I'm here for the project review." Behind him, my father's voice echoed before he appeared. He was in deep conversation with two men in identical Navy suits. Then he saw me and froze. "Lillian, what's going on? Why are you dressed like that?" he asked, his eyes narrowed in confusion. He looked at me, then at the others in the hallway, assessing their reactions. He was understanding, very slowly, that something was wrong. Before I could reply, a tall woman with short white hair rounded the corner. Helena Hastings, CEO of Bridgepoint Solutions, stopped mid-stride when she saw me. Then her expression broke into a smile. She walked directly toward me and extended her hand. "Colonel Chambers, I didn't realize you'd be here in person." "A pleasure." I shook her hand. I was in the area. Thought it would be helpful to walk through the brief myself. "Absolutely. You'll elevate the room just by being here," Helena said with a laugh. Then, turning to the group behind her, for those who don't know, this is Colonel Lillian Chambers, our Pentagon liaison for Project Guardian. She has final approval authority for all military integrations on this project. It was as if the air had been sucked out of the hallway. I didn't look at my father or brother then. I didn't need to. Their silence told me everything. We walked into the conference room together. My name was already on a placard at the head of the table, next to Helena's. I sat, reviewed my notes, and waited. The team began to file in: directors, engineers, project leads. Each introduced themselves to me with the careful courtesy reserved for people who could stall or greenlight millions in funding. Some were surprised I was so young. Most were surprised I was a woman. No one asked twice after seeing the insignia. Arthur and my father were the last to enter. They sat further down the table, stiff and quiet. The meeting began promptly at 9 a.m. Helena opened the session, then turned it over to me. As we get started, I'd like to thank Colonel Chambers for joining us in person. Her oversight has been invaluable, and her technical guidance has already refined key aspects of our cyber protocol project. I stood, briefed the room on current milestones, then outlined critical changes I expected to be implemented before the next round of funding. I made eye contact with each speaker. I asked questions. I requested documentation. And then it was Arthur's turn. He rose slowly, clearly uneasy. As the systems integration lead, I've been developing a new implementation strategy for Phase 2, he began, his voice faltering. I believe it aligns with our performance objectives. I waited, arms crossed, letting him finish. Then I spoke. Mr. Chambers, I said, neutral and professional, could you clarify how your proposed method accounts for the latency limit specified in our last Pentagon memo? He blinked. I can review that part. You will need to, I replied. Our benchmarks are non-negotiable. Please revise the protocol draft and submit it by end of business Thursday. He nodded quickly. Yes, ma'am. For a moment, the room was silent. Then we moved on. I took control of the next discussion item as if nothing had happened. But everything had happened. The meeting concluded just after noon. Helena wrapped up with a few remarks about transparency and collaboration, then turned to me. Colonel Chambers will remain on-site through tomorrow for follow-up assessments. Please extend full access and support. This project is critical for both national security and our future partnerships. As people began to file out, I felt lingering glances, no longer curious, but acknowledging. My credentials were no longer a mystery. I had earned my seat at the table, and they knew it. My father hovered in the hallway afterward, just outside the glass walls of the conference room. He looked like a man who had walked into a room expecting applause and found a courtroom. Lillian, he said once we were alone, still reaching for a tone of authority. We need to talk. I nodded. Your office. He hesitated, then gestured down the hall. Inside, the air felt heavier. My mother was already there, sitting stiffly in a visitor's chair. Arthur stood near the window, arms crossed, jaw tight. The three of them together, my childhood jury. I didn't sit. I stood at ease, hands clasped behind my back. Calm, unyielding. How long have you been a colonel? My father asked, finally. 6 months, I replied. 6 months, he repeated hollowly. And you didn't tell us. I did, I said softly. I sent invitations to my promotion ceremony, emails, articles. I left voicemails. None of you responded. He opened his mouth, but my mother cut him off. We didn't know what it meant, she said. Colonel, that sounds high, but we didn't understand. Why didn't you explain? Because I stopped trying to justify my worth, I replied. Every time I called, the first question was about Arthur's projects or his quarterly numbers. You never asked about me unless it was to suggest I quit the army and come home. We thought you were stuck, Arthur said, like moving from base to base, never really going anywhere. I looked at him. You said last night that people in the army just follow orders. You laughed when you said it. He shifted uncomfortably. I didn't know you were doing this. You never asked, I said again. My mother reached for her purse, then stopped. Lillian, I don't know what to say. We should have been at your commission, at your graduation, at everything. I thought you were pushing us away. No, I said. I just stopped waiting for you to show up. The silence that followed was thick, uncomfortable, but necessary. My father cleared his throat. So, what do you want now? Public recognition? An apology? A headline in the company newsletter? I shook my head. I want nothing more than what I've always deserved. Respect for my work, for my decisions, for the fact that I didn't fail just because I didn't follow your blueprint. Arthur finally pushed off the window. You reviewed my presentation today, and it was fair, he said, quieter now. You didn't humiliate me. I wasn't there for that, I replied. I was doing my job. He nodded slowly. It was impressive, honestly. You were commanding. It might have been the first genuine compliment I'd ever heard from him. My father stood, but didn't approach. You built something we didn't understand, he said. That's on us. We thought we knew best. We didn't. For the first time, I saw hesitation in his voice, not defeat, but a beginning. He extended his hand, not to show off, but in a gesture I recognized from every military promotion I'd ever been through, a silent offering of respect. Colonel Chambers, he said, his voice husky, I owe you an apology. I completely underestimated you. I took his hand. Firm squeeze. No bitterness, just closure. I accept. My mother blinked rapidly, then stood. We'd like to try again if you'll let us. One step at a time, I said. And for the first time in years, I believed it truly could happen. 6 months later, my apartment in Washington, D.C. was quiet, yet full. The open-plan living room overlooked the Potomac, a clean skyline beyond the windows. My bookshelf held medals hidden between cybersecurity books and a few framed mission citations. Not much, just enough. That night, my family joined me for dinner at my table on my turf. My father was the first to arrive, carrying a framed article. Thought you'd like a copy, he said. It was a printout from a defense journal, covering the success of Project Guardian. My photo was centered, me in full uniform, alongside General Miller and Helena Hastings. He handed it to me as if it were something fragile. I've had it in my office for a few months, he added, his eyes not quite meeting mine. Thank you, Dad, I said. That means a lot. My mother came in a few minutes later, holding a warm pie dish with both hands. Apple, she said with an awkward smile. Still your favorite, right? It is. She looked around the apartment. So clean, so organized. I don't know how you keep it like this. I almost replied with a joke. Military habit, but decided against it. She was trying, she didn't need comments. Arthur and his wife arrived last, bringing an expensive bottle of wine and a strange kind of ease I hadn't expected. After dinner, as dishes clattered in the sink and conversation turned to quiet compliments, Arthur pulled me aside. I implemented the launch framework you mentioned, he said. The team wasn't crazy about it at first, but it works better than the one we had. Did you tell them where you got it? He grinned sheepishly. Eventually, after letting them believe I was a genius for about 5 minutes, I smiled sideways. As long as it's working. He nodded. It is. And so are you. I mean, you really put yourself together. I don't think you ever said that. No, I didn't. Well, I'm saying it now. Across the room, I saw my father examining the medals on the shelf. His eyes stopped on one in particular, the cyber defense citation for battling a foreign breach that nearly crippled 2 federal networks. I read about that one, he said quietly. Didn't realize at the time you were leading it. I replied. He didn't add anything else. Just nodded. It wasn't a parade. It wasn't a movie ending. But it was real. And that made it better. Later that night, over coffee and my mother's pie, my father raised his glass in a quiet toast. To Colonel Lillian Chambers, he said, who proved her worth isn't found in following someone else's path, but in forging her own. We all raised our glasses. I looked around the room and saw something I'd never seen growing up: recognition. Not pity, not tolerance, but the kind of earned respect no one could take back. And in that moment, I knew something important. The victory wasn't in them finally seeing me. It was in the fact that, even if they hadn't, I still would have kept going. I thought I needed their approval, that one day, if I worked hard enough, they would finally see me. But the truth is, I didn't need their recognition to be real. I was already enough. Walking into that boardroom in uniform wasn't revenge. It was quiet clarity. I didn't need to explain who I was. My presence did that for me. They once told me I was wasting my potential, that I'd never amount to anything. And yet, there I was, leading the project they had built their careers on. That moment didn't heal everything. It didn't erase the past. But it did something better. It proved I never needed to follow their path to create value. Thanks for listening to Lillian's story. Would you have accepted reconnecting with your family? Tell us in the comments, we'd love to know. If you liked this story, please like and share this video to support us in bringing more and more inspiring stories, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any stories. See you in the next video.